Attending our church here, we'd love to have you in our directory. It doesn't have to be a member, an adherent. Everyone is welcome. Plus, you're welcome if you want to bring your family to come in and have your portraits taken as well. Tuesday night is our Spirit Cafe, and we would love it if you'd come out and join us to watch the next episode of First Contact, thank you. It's a really interesting little video, and we have a discussion afterwards, great fellowship, tea, coffee, goodies, so please come and join us. And also Wednesday morning we have a regular Spirit Cafe. It's a busy week. Wednesday also, Krista has been really busy doing trunk or treat for the kids. So any kids, welcome to come and see what St. John is offering for Halloween. Anyone who may be living out in the country who doesn't get visitors that would like to, decorate your car and come on in and hand out candies as well. Last one, I guess, is the MS fundraiser on Saturday. So please come out and support Karen and MS Society. Thanks.
Can I turn my mic on? I want to just underline the directory and having your photograph taken. There are lots of reasons why that directory is very important to sort of get a sense of foundation, but it enables newcomers to put names to faces, and it enables ministers to remind themselves who goes with that name. Sometimes you know the face and you know the name, but you don't put them together. Directory really helps with that. And we've got it timed so that if you're thinking of giving Christmas gifts, this would be a really great Christmas gift at a very reasonable price. And also thinking of giving, how many here have started Christmas shopping? Just a few already, yes. I tend to be a last-minute one. But if you're looking for a gift to give, and it's for somebody that you just, either they would really appreciate a gift for mission, or there's somebody that you just can't think of what to buy for, and you can find all kinds of interesting projects to support in the name of somebody that you would like to give a gift to. It's called Gifts with Vision. It's a project of the United Church of Canada connected with Mission and Service. All the projects in here are projects supported by Mission and Service funds, and it's a great way to contribute to Mission and Service and give a gift.
Does anyone else have any other announcements? Okay, would you celebrate?
Well, and it's her 96th birthday today. Son's birthday this week.
It's Mark and Jim's birthday next Saturday, and Jim will be home from Scotland for a quick little chiropractic conference, and we'll get to see him on his birthday.
Birthday this past week. Granddaughter's birthday.
We have 3 birthdays. Last week was Brody. This week coming, we have Marilee. We'll never get money from her on Sunday because she's coming next week. And Matthew. And also, I would like to thank everyone who helped on Monday to make our PA Day such a great success. The ladies that came in and helped with the lunch, Liz and Marianne and Lois were coming at lunchtime. And a special thank you to Hannah. You were terrific, Hannah. It made our life so much easier. Also, Alyssa and Emily. Thank you.
I'm grateful for the music that we have today, and you won't understand some of the words today. But I don't really care. You probably know that I spend quite a bit, some of you might know I spend quite a bit of my time looking at statistics. And if you look at one statistic in particular, look at how much is spent on armaments and war, it's just a shock, particularly this week when we consider Saudi Arabia, because wherever we dump money, guns and armaments and everything else, that's where most people die, and you can just see it, okay? And I'm just going to suggest that how much better the world would be, even if you don't understand the language or the music, if we spent a little bit more money on making music and singing.
Yeah.
we were away in the summer, and in the fall we've had birthdays, we've had anniversaries, we've had lots going on, but on Thursday, Abby's flag football team won GPSSA, so I'm very excited about that.
This is not so much a celebration because I want to dedicate this service to our brothers and sisters in the synagogue in Pittsburgh and the terrible massacre that took place there. And I'm thinking of all the ways in which violence is making its face, showing up in all over our world right now, but particularly in this part of the world in a shocking way. So I dedicate that little offering to peace, but thinking particularly of the people in Pittsburgh and all our Jewish brothers and sisters around the world. Happy special day to you. Happy special day to you. Happy special day, God bless you. Happy special day to you. We light our sacred fire. The Christ candle, the living flame that reminds us of God's presence within us, God's presence very powerfully between us, which we can either tend or ignore, and God's presence in the entire universe, holding everything together in all of its microcosm and the great cosmos. And for this, we give thanks. Let's stand. Christ's way has been known in many, many different ways around the world. And right now we're going to hear the famous Jewish song about God's way, which is called The Lord's My Shepherd. And the double treble choir are going to sing it for us. Please be seated, everybody. I did say we were going to do it after the call to worship, right? Sorry. presence and God's peace, even in the presence of our foes. And of course, we believe we follow the one who taught us to love our enemies, to find a way for love to be the way of peace in the world. And so let's call one another into worship. Come, my faithful people, and join the church throughout the ages as hearts and minds earnestly seek the truth.
Together as God's people, hungry for holy presence, ready for God's word to inspire us for these times.
Come, let us worship God. Our opening hymn is "This is God's Wondrous World," and Audrey's not here, but I hope she's listening on the live stream. Let us stand and sing. So children, children, if you could come up and join me, that would be really great. I am going to sit on my little milking stool. And the first thing I'm going to do, if you would look at me, is I'm going to sing you a little song. It doesn't need any accompaniment, but one of the things that we're talking about is how we make peace in our world, and one of the ways is by singing. So I'm going to sing you just this little song, and there's a special word in it, okay? I wonder if you can tell me what that word is by the time I'm finished. And I don't sing as beautifully as your mother does, but I like to sing, and everyone needs to sing. Okay. Shalom, my friends, shalom, my friends, shalom, shalom. May peace be with you, may peace be with you, shalom, shalom. Do you know that one? So what was the special word in that? Yes? Peace. There's another word that means peace. Yes? Shalom. Shalom. Yes. Shalom is a Hebrew word. Can you all say it with me? Shalom. And you know, if you're in Israel, or sometimes maybe in a synagogue, they might say shalom. 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 In some parts of the world they say salam. Salam is the Arabic way of saying the Hebrew word shalom, which means peace be with you. But it also means something much bigger than, well, what do we think of when we use the word peace? What do you think of? Peace, yes. No war. That is what we usually think of. Exactly right. No war, no fighting, not using guns, and being at peace. Well, when the heat, yes? Time for yourself. I like that. Yes. Being quiet. Give me some peace. Yes. Yeah, that's a very good meaning of the word too. Yes. Sorry? Giving some shalom. But shalom is all those things that you've mentioned. Time to yourself. Give me some quiet. No war, no guns. Shalom also means the world in the way that God would want it to be. So it isn't just about no war. It's about friendship. Let's think of other things that make the world really what we sang about, God's wondrous world, and all the things that make God's world so wonderful. Yes? The world is just a bunch of people. Is that all that's in the world? There's animals. So maybe shalom has to do with the way we treat animals. Yes? Water. Oh, bless you, my son. I think he's catching on. In some churches, when the minister asks a question, the children learn that the answer is Jesus. Because of who I am, Owen has figured out that the word is water. Hallelujah. Good, clean, wonderful water for everyone. And that's the big key. There's more water in the world than land, but there's not so much fresh water, is there? Drinking water. Yeah. So drinking water for everyone. Oh, be very careful. You know what? You can't lean against that, sweetheart, Oliver and Eric. You can't lean against that, or you're going to have a spill, and then we won't have shalom anymore. Okay, Joy, come right close up to me. I want you to touch me. Touch my knee. Okay.
morning's reading is Mark 10, verses 46 to 52.
Bartimaeus.
I knew I was going to get that wrong, so I checked right off. Bartimaeus. Blind Bartimaeus receives his sight. Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, that is the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet. But he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So when they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." Throwing the cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," said Jesus. "Your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road.
This next hymn that we're going to sing together comes from More Voices. It's not a familiar hymn. It's called "God Weeps." And I thought on the day when we were contemplating war and what it does in our world, that it would be most appropriate. Let's remain seated for singing this song. It is more contemplative than triumphal. So please remain seated and sing as you are able. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable to our God. Amen. Any of you who received an email from me will know my little special signature. It's a saying of Mahatma Gandhi. You all know that I grew up in India and I went to school in a boarding school. Mahatma Gandhi was my hero for many, many reasons, but he was a man who devoted his life to creating justice in the world, seeking justice in the world through nonviolence, through action, even through disobedience, but it would always be nonviolent. And one of his sayings is, "There is no way to peace. Peace is the way." There is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Strong actions, but strong actions that are nonviolent, that do not create harm and do not destroy. This story of Bartimaeus, the Gospel of Mark, I wish I could go back and begin again in year B of the lectionary, which is devoted to the Gospel of Mark, because I learned so much. But oh well, that's the way that things go, and there will be another round. Hopefully I'll be here, and so will you. But I've learned that Mark, the Gospel writer, as all the Gospel writers, let me take a drink here, was an artist in the way in which he put his Gospel together. Yes, there's the story of Jesus, and there's all the incidents, and there's all the memory of the early church. And from this, from Paul's letters, and from all the oral stories of the church, Mark pulled together his Gospel, and then he had to, like any writer does, decide how to tell the story, what to put first, what to follow what, all that kind of careful putting together of the story and the juxtaposing of incidents so that they mean more than just the account themselves. That's what we have here with the story of Bartimaeus. In fact, the story of Bartimaeus, this blind beggar sitting on the side of the road on the way in Jericho on the way out towards Jerusalem. And again we have that secret code of Aramaic in the midst of everything. Bartimaeus is an Aramaic word, and it means son of Timaeus. And it even says that in the account. And Timaeus is the Aramaic word for the poor. So he is the son of the poor one, the son of poverty. And he makes his living, a meager living, by putting out his cloak, sitting by the wayside and asking for alms, the charity of people. And he hears that Jesus is going by, and he starts to call out. And it's astounding when you think of it. These disciples who have been around Jesus, been receiving his teaching, they love him. They love Jesus. But when this beggar starts yelling, what do? They go, "Shh, be quiet. Don't disturb our Lord." And it was very similar to the way they treated the mothers who brought their babies, the children. Go away, he's too busy. But Jesus heard. In fact, I love it because, as soon as you tell me to shut up, I'll speak louder. And Bartimaeus is like that. Bartimaeus won't be shut up. He starts to call louder. "Lord, Son of David, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." All he knew is that he wanted Jesus' attention. He wanted Jesus to come and talk to him. And Jesus hears the sound of his voice and says, "Call him to me." And the followers, the disciples, sort of change their tune all of a sudden, and they go and they say, "Come on, get up, quick, he's calling you." The way they are treating Jesus says some lord who's, deigning to talk to the poor beggar. Well, there's something in that because remember I talked about juxtaposing stories, and the story just before this one about blind Bartimaeus. There's a story about the Zebedee brothers coming up to Jesus, taking him aside and saying, can you do, there's something we have to ask of you, Lord. And Jesus asked them the question, which is the same question that he asked Bartimaeus. He says to the Zebedee brothers, what would you like me to do for you? And what the Zebedee brothers want is a place of status on either side of Jesus when he comes into his kingdom and sits on his throne. They want to be the cabinet ministers, or they have a vision of what it's going to be like when Jesus is the king. And even the way that they treat Bartimaeus, you can see that they still have Jesus despaired of his disciples because he's been trying to get across to them that his kingdom is not like the kingdoms of this world. The values are completely upside down. The last shall be first and the first shall be last. He's been saying it for chapter upon chapter, story upon story, when it comes to the scribes, when it comes to the children, when it comes to... He's been trying so hard to get across to his disciples the nature of his kingdom. And so when they say, come on, he's calling you, up, quick! And Bartimaeus just springs up, throws off his cloak, and runs forward, blind man that he is. And Jesus asked him the same question that was asked of the disciples. What do you want me to do for you? And Bartimaeus, he most probably didn't even have this in his mind when he was calling out, have mercy on me. But asked directly, what do you want me to do for you? He knew right away. And he said, I want to see. In the way that Mark is telling this story, and you hear about the way in which the disciples are blind to they can't hear, they can't see, they are just completely out of it. And this poor beggar says, I want to see. And right away you know, it isn't simply seeing physically, although that's a part of it. But this would be a very unkind story if it was just about the healing of physical blindness. This is a story of a poor man, and very often the religious authorities would see them as unclean, must have become blind because of some sin committed. Certainly the poor were not upheld. And Bartimaeus, it says, that Jesus said, because of your faith you will be made well. And then immediately what happens, no ifs, ands, or buts, he follows Jesus on the way. And you know that he is following in a way for which he has new vision. Physical sight, yes, but he has the eyes to see where Jesus is leading, what Jesus is leading his disciples towards. And that we know, all of us know, this is the beginning. This is when Jesus enters Jerusalem. We have Palm Sunday, the Palm Sunday parade, we have the entire Holy Week story, and then this is leading to the crucifixion. So it's the way of the cross. What Jesus has been predicting and trying to get his disciples to understand is that his kingdom is not like the kingdoms of this world. It's not based on dominance. It's not based on wealth. It's not based on all of those things that we find so important. It's based upon it's based upon lifting up the lowly. It's based upon the common good. It's based upon everyone. It's that shalom that I was speaking to the children about. Jesus' kingdom is about shalom. Shalom. And Bart gets up and follows, and there's a whole novel here. I'm sure somebody must have written it, because your imagination is just full of that. Then what happened? I mean, they went into Jerusalem, and there was this, he got on the donkey, and there was this parade, and there were the Romans on the other side, and it was all, whoa! And then there were all the incidents in the temple, and all of Jesus' teachings in the temple, and then there was that little moment where the widow, the rich people are putting their money in, and Jesus says, well, sure. And then they see this widow putting in a tiny little mite, hardly any money at all, just a penny. And he says she's given more than any of those wealthy people, because she's given everything she has. Bartimaeus was most probably sitting there or around when that happened. You could just see the story of Bartimaeus as he followed Jesus along the way of the cross, and maybe he was there at the crucifixion. Who knows? Jesus calls us to see things the way they are. And as I was working on this service today, just kept being bombarded with visions of the violence that's going on in our world right now. I looked at that map that you're referring to, where the arms race, the arms in the world, and the places where conflict are happening on the earth are all in the south. They're all Middle East and Africa and South America, and just all over the other parts of the world, Canada, North America, even up in Russia. They're another color. They're a color for non-conflict. Yeah, sure. They are the ones that are creating all of the arms that are going to fight the wars. We're in the middle of that right now with Saudi Arabia. We provide them with wonderful armored vehicles, fabulous, state-of-the-art, We're involved whether the war is happening on our premises or not, in our country or not. But just look, the Honduran migrants traveling by foot, thousands upon thousands of them, leaving this place that we've heard about because of Edwin because of Karen Spring and Edwin. The place is a cauldron of violence. The Honduran army is the army that is growing the most in our world. In our world right now, the arms buildup in Honduras is greater than any other country. Who are they at war with? Their own people. And the U.S. and Canada are involved with all of that. And then you get pipe bombs being, mailed to people. And then you get what happened in Pittsburgh with this hate. Hate is taking over. It's coming alive and being approved of. And then in the midst of it all, I see, it pops up on my computer as I'm working, a service for Matthew Shepard. It was on Friday at the National Cathedral, the Episcopal Cathedral in Washington. It has taken 20 years for them to be able to have a public ceremony around the life and death of Matthew Shepard. And what was his crime? 20-year-old kid was that he was gay. And now, right now in Brazil, right now, today, this very day, we'll hear the results at the end of this day. Who will be taking over in Brazil? And apparently, it's a person by the name of Bolsonaro, and he's known for being homophobic, misogynist. We all know what the meaning of those words are, right? We don't like women, we don't like gay people. And racist beyond all imagining, has promised that he's going to sell all the lands that belong to indigenous people. The fact that they've had rights to these lands since time immemorial doesn't matter. These are all the things that are happening in our world. So we as followers of Jesus are called to see. We have to be able to see what's going on in order to be able to walk the way of the cross and choose the paths of peace. We have to be able to see what's going on so that we can have a vision of the way the world can be. Dream of a world where there's enough for all. Dream of a beloved community and a restored creation. This is God's wondrous world. Is just full of love for this world and this beautiful earth. A restored creation and the peaceable kingdom, which is an image from our Bible. And it's the image behind the word shalom. And seeing this way, seeing as Bart saw, Bartimaeus, I call him Bart affectionately, he follows in the way, following Jesus in the way of the cross. Jesus said, pick up your cross and follow me. It's going to be costly, this new kingdom. And yes, we see it with honesty, what's going on. And we also, we have to have hope. We do have hope. We know there is hope. The way God sees. And yes, it does make God weep. It does make God weep. And now we're going to have a presentation from Double Trouble. Receive it in Jesus' name. Amen. Please be seated and let us pray. Jesus and of Christ. We are reminded today that your blessings do not necessarily follow the logic of the world. The world believes that the rich are blessed, but Jesus reminds us that it is the poor who are blessed, the poor in spirit and the materially poor as well. We, your people here at St. John's, pray for a more just world in which all have enough and none are left behind. We fear death and avoid its inevitable arrival, but Jesus tells us that those who mourn are blessed. Help us to experience the truth of this mystery. Bring healing and wholeness to all who are sick, and comfort those of us who have lost loved ones. While many people covet power, Jesus blesses the meek. Help us to learn, O God, the ways of humility. Help us to stand in solidarity with the oppressed and marginalized peoples of our world. Show us your presence in the faces of those that the world forgets. O God, give us a hunger and thirst for righteousness. Fill our hearts with love, overflowing with mercy, and make our hearts pure and give us a vision of your glory. In a society that's divided by race and gender and class and ideology and sexual orientation and so many other labels that we have created. Remind us, we are created in your image. Each of us is a beautiful reflection of you. Each of us, your beloved child. Help us to end our conflicts and wars. Help us to be peacemakers and agents of reconciliation. Help us to be the salt of the earth, the light of the world, sharing with others what we have received, boldly proclaiming the good news of your love, finding the seeds of your kingdom within us, within our lives, and letting your way grow in our lives and throughout the world. Like Bartimaeus, give us eyes to see the ways you are changing the world in which we live. Give us ears to hear your call to join with you in the great transformation you are bringing about right now. In Jesus' name, amen. Let us sing Amazing Grace, accompanied by our new organ. Let's stand.
Amazing grace, how sweet
wonders of God's creation, accompanied by the one who shared our existence, enfolded in the purposeful caring of the Spirit. To be God's faithful people, we go to be God's faithful people in all the places life calls us to be. And may the blessing of God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer of all life, be with us now and always. Amen. Go in peace, everyone.